In May 1941, at the Alamein field on the island of Crete, heavy machine gun fire stitched the air just inches above the ground. Charles Upham lay huddled behind a gnarled olive tree, his face a sickly, jaundiced yellow and his features twisted in agony. He wasn't just dodging bullets. He was in the throes of a brutal bout of dysentery, locked in a desperate struggle with his own anatomy in the middle of a literal meat grinder. During a brief lull, while a German gunner swapped ammo belts, this man, barely able to stand, suddenly lunged forward. Clutching 2 grenades and running with a bizarre, bow-legged waddle, he charged the Nazi position. To his fellow soldiers, it looked like a heroic suicide run. But as Upham later admitted, his only conscious thought was that he was absolutely not going to shit his pants in front of the German army. Starved for 2 days and racked by gut-wrenching cramps, every breath felt like a knife in his stomach. He moved like a broken folding ruler, stiff, jerky, and awkward. Yet, to the German gunners, he was a ghost. Using a mere 12-inch dip in the terrain, Upham slithered across the jagged, dry gravel like a dehydrated viper. When he finally stopped, he was just 15 yards from the spitting muzzle of an MG-34. At that range, the gunner could have counted the buttons on his tunic. Upham felt the final ultimatum from his bowels. His hands, shaking from fever and exhaustion, were too weak to pull the pins normally, so he leaned down and yanked the first pin with his teeth. It was a move born of sheer desperation, executed with chilling precision. 2 muffled crump sounds followed, and the machine gun nest vanished in a cloud of cordite and dust. Standard infantry doctrine dictates that a grenadier should throw and roll for cover, but Upham vaulted into the smoke before the echoes died down. Inside the trench, a German loader was frantically trying to shove his comrade's mangled corpse off the gun. He looked up into a pair of eyes bloodshot from fever and pure, unadulterated rage. Upham didn't waste a bullet. He cleared the trench with a bayonet and the butt of his rifle. By the time reinforcements arrived, they found their emaciated platoon leader squatting by the trench, looking disgusted as he stripped the pants off a dead German. As he changed, his face a pale shade of green, he barked his next order: "Turn this gun around. Let's not be rude to the next wave of Germans dropping in." For the next 9 days, Crete became a crucible of willpower. Without air support, the New Zealanders were fighting a losing battle of attrition. Upham's leadership was cold and calculated. To him, ammo was worth more than life, so you didn't pull the trigger until you could see the whites of their eyes. Cover was worth more than dignity, so you crawled through piles of corpses if you had to. German paratroopers soon realized a different kind of predator was stalking the olive groves. Every night, the yellow-faced Kiwi would vanish into the dark with a bag of grenades, and every morning, the German outposts would find a few more bodies killed in silent, close-quarters combat. By the time the evacuation was ordered, the Allied lines had collapsed. Thousands of men had to trek across the jagged mountains toward the southern port of Sfakia, a journey known as the Path of Death. Under a blistering sun, water was more valuable than gold. Upham's weight had dropped by nearly 35 pounds in 9 days, leaving him looking like old parchment stretched over a skeleton. Yet he was still lugging the heaviest ammo crate in the platoon. Halfway through the retreat, the sound of a firefight erupted behind them. A section of the rearguard had been cut off. When his commander told him they were a lost cause, Upham spat out a mouthful of bloody saliva, the result of scorched gums and dehydration. He didn't say a word. He just began unbuckling Bren gun magazines from the wounded and reloading his pistol. While everyone watched in stunned silence, the man who could barely walk turned around and ran back toward the German army. He returned the first time with 2 critically wounded men. He went back a second time and dragged out a shell-shocked recruit and half a box of ammo. When he appeared on the ridgeline a third time, he had the entire lost section behind him. The section leader later recalled that when they saw the pale, waddling figure coming toward them through the crossfire, they thought the Grim Reaper had finally arrived. Upham had stood in the open with a Bren gun, trading lead with the Germans and burning through 5 magazines just to rip a hole in the encirclement. When the evacuation boats finally pulled away from Sfakia, Upham slumped against the railing, his uniform a mess of salt, blood, and filth. He took a sip of water, immediately vomited it back up, and muttered, "Damn it, the Germans overdid it with the cordite. The smell is making me sicker than the trots." That action earned him his first Victoria Cross, with an official report that simply stated, "It is almost unbelievable, but he did it." By July 1942, the damp sea breeze of Crete had been replaced by the choking dust of the Sahara. Upham was now a captain at the edge of the El Alamein line. Ruweisat Ridge was a barely visible limestone hump, but it was the key to North Africa. On the night of the 14th of July, Upham's 20th Battalion was given a suicide mission: cross miles of open desert on foot without tanks or artillery and punch a hole through the German line. At 4 a.m. a German flare hissed into the sky, exposing the New Zealanders like targets on a range. The ridge exploded. Machine guns wove a web of red tracers across the sand. Upham's platoon hit the thickest part of the defence. Upham didn't wait for orders. He grabbed a grenade and charged a German ammo truck that was shredding his men. Just as he was about to throw, a 50mm mortar shell detonated nearby. The shrapnel sliced through his left shoulder, exposing the bone, and a second later, a burst of machine gun fire shattered his left arm, turning his forearm into a mangled mess hanging by a few strands of muscle. Most men would have gone into shock. Upham just knelt in the dirt. With his left arm useless, he jammed a grenade into a rock crevice, clamped his back teeth onto the metal pin, and yanked. The pin came free, tearing his gums. He lunged forward, his shattered arm swinging wildly, and tossed the grenade into the truck's bed. The secondary explosion turned the vehicle into a white-hot fireball. For a moment, the German line went silent, not because of a malfunction, but because of the sheer, paralyzing shock of seeing someone break the laws of human physics. One German survivor later wrote, "He didn't fight like a soldier, he charged as if he were death itself." Upham was eventually found unconscious from blood loss, his right hand still locked in a death grip around a twisted grenade pin. When German intelligence saw his name, the room went cold. They recognized him from Crete and marked his file. Combat willpower exceeds normal limits, extremely dangerous. He was sent to Colditz Castle, the high-security fortress for incorrigible Allied officers. For Upham, the war moved indoors. He refused to salute, measured guard rotations, and tried to escape so many times, once jumping from a moving train with his arm still strapped to his chest, that the Germans assigned a dedicated squad just to watch him. The guards were the real prisoners. They were exhausted just trying to keep him inside. In April 1945, when US forces liberated Colditz, Upham didn't celebrate. He walked into the German armory, grabbed a pistol, and demanded a jeep back to the front. He was eventually awarded a bar to his Victoria Cross, one of only 3 men in history to win the medal twice, and the only combat soldier. True to form, Upham tried to refuse the medal, arguing he only did what his men did. When the people of New Zealand raised £10,000 to buy him a farm, he refused that too, insisting it be turned into a scholarship for the children of the fallen. He spent his final decades as a quiet farmer in North Canterbury, tending to sheep with a left arm that never quite worked right. Charles Upham passed away in 1994, having proved that the most dangerous man in the British Empire wanted nothing more than the peace of his own garden.